After literally the longest season in NFL history, the playoffs are finally here, and I've got the cheat codes for y'all. Now, I don't know if you saw my last video, but it was a pretty accurate playoff projection. I predicted 12 out of the 14 playoff teams, may not have had the seeding perfectly, but I got the number 1 seeds and 6 of the 8 division winners, and basically predicted how the entire final month of football will play out, minus a few games here and there. I think it's safe to say that I'm pretty much the Antonio Brown of all NFL YouTubers. You never know when I'm going to show up, but when I do, you know you're going to get some all-pro production out of me. We have a little playoff prediction tradition around here where we do 3 different Super Bowl predictions. Number 1 being the playoff bracket teams, where you fill out a NFL playoff, kind of like a March Madness bracket, based on the matchups leading to the Super Bowl. Number 2 being the 2 best teams, regardless of seeding, regardless of matchup, just who you think the actual 2 best teams in the league are, one from the AFC, one from the NFC, obviously. And then number 3, the somewhat controversial NFL conspiracy pick. This is who the NFL would want to see in the big game, whether it be for ratings, whether it be because they hate your team, whatever it is, let me know. I would love to see your predictions, and I encourage you to number your predictions 1 through 3 in the comments. Now this video is going to be kind of long because I'm going to try to give every playoff team their due justice because they've earned it. So timestamps are going to be in the description of this video and in the pinned comment just in case you want to bounce around. Let's dive right into the wild card matchups. Starting in the AFC on Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time, we've got the Raiders at the Bengals. And after everything that they had been through this season, I wasn't sure that the Raiders would be able to overcome it all. And they were definitely one of the teams that I'd left out of my previous projections. In my opinion, Rick Bisaccia definitely deserves Coach of the Year for what he's done. And I don't usually say this, but I'm actually happy for Raiders fans, as well as Derek Carr, who I'm sure I don't have to remind you, has never actually played in a playoff game despite that MVP-like season that he had, being cut short due to an injury right before the playoffs. As for the Bengals, let me start off by saying that this is the scariest Bengals roster that I've ever seen. They had some good teams during the AJ Green and Vontaze Burfict years, but they always still had Andy Dalton holding them back, especially in the playoff games. Now they have a true assassin at quarterback. The greatest concern with the Bengals is going to be their head coach, Zach Taylor. The Bengals offense did get a little conservative and stale during the middle of the season, and that held them back a lot. The game plan opened up when it had to, but with Zach Taylor being such a young head coach in the playoffs for the first time, I am concerned they will pull back on the reins for fear of making a mistake. We've all seen that happen way too many times in the past, but with some championship caliber players already on their offense, maybe they can get in the coach's ear and encourage them to trust in that championship Tiger blood. We also don't know how Joe Burrow's knee is going to be in this one. Remember, he injured it late in that Chiefs matchup. He did have a week to rest, but that also could be another factor in limiting the offense early on. Fun fact, the Bengals have not won a playoff game since 1991. And even though I think the Bengals offense could get off to a slow start, I think they got probably the easiest matchup of wild card weekend. Not because the Raiders are not very good, but because this is still a team with an interim head coach, and they just played in what was probably one of the most emotionally taxing games of the season, with an extra quarter in the Sunday night primetime slot. Now they get to go and play the very first wild card game. It's kind of a raw deal, but gotta go with the Bengals in this one. Sorry, I was having a problem with my sound on my mic. I think I fixed it. Next up, we've got the Patriots versus the Bills. Now, my Madden buddies and I, we always used to have a theory that there was no way you would win a Super Bowl if you had a rookie quarterback. Maybe it was because of the player's attributes, maybe it was just user error, but we felt like there was something in the AI of the game that would just sabotage you somehow, some way. And that stigma does correlate to the NFL because when it's win or go home, it's just so freaking difficult to win with a rookie quarterback. And even though McCorkle Jones has championship experience in his first year starting with the Crimson Tide, I'm afraid that this Patriots roster is not as lopsided in surrounding talent to the degree that those Alabama ones continue to show us on a yearly basis. McCorkle had already looked like he had hit a rookie wall this season, even though it is so hard to pick against Bill Belichick in the playoffs. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if Bill Belichick sort of hoodwinked us all the last few weeks, scale the offense back, the game plans back, just hoping to be able to catch the first matchup off guard a little bit. And in this instance, it's his AFC East rivals, the Buffalo Bills. Now, the Bills are such an interesting team. When they win, they typically torch people, but when they lose, they don't even look like the same team. Josh Allen is about as fun of a quarterback as there is to watch in the NFL right now, and I do believe that this defense, most notably the defensive line, has a really good potential of disrupting Mac Jones and getting him uncomfortable early on. The weather is not going to be the same in this matchup as it was in the previous version that took place in Buffalo, so I gotta go with the Bills in this one. And then the final AFC matchup for Super Wildcard Weekend doesn't take place until Sunday night, and that is the Steelers versus the Chiefs. The Steelers were the only other team that I did not accurately predict predict in my original projections back in early December, but I hardly doubt that I'm alone in that when they had just gotten off of some pretty ugly matchups, including one where they tied the Lions. Ben Roethlisberger and this offense looked stagnant at best, and the defense relied solely on TJ Watt getting 3 sacks a game. Now I will admit, while I was watching that Chargers and Raiders game on Sunday night, hoping for a tie like everybody else seemed to be except for Steelers fans, Chris Collinsworth did bring up a good point. It would have been such a weird end to Ben Roethlisberger's career, or at least his time with the Steelers, had that game ended in a tie, especially when he had such a dramatic sort of storybook ending to his final game in Pittsburgh, and then for his final regular season game to end the way that it did, only to have the Steelers in the playoffs for about 4 hours before getting knocked out due to a tie, which typically everybody hates. Now their reward is to go up against the Kansas City Chiefs, which I think everybody recognizes that they have got legitimate Super Bowl potential. They've been to the bowl 2 years in a row and have one of, if not the most talented quarterback in the league right now. Last year it was the offensive line that prevented them from giving the Bucks at least a good game against them. So what did? They went out and they changed the entire offensive line. Hopefully they've had time to gel. They are led by 2 standout rookies, and I wish I could say that this will be the Achilles heel of this team once again, but it's been the Chiefs defense. It's been up and down and then trended back down slightly for them, and honestly they should be embarrassed by the effort they put forth against the Broncos. I get it, you don't want to give that extra 10% in an almost meaningless game, end up getting hurt, but I worry about the bad habits that you can pick up when you play a game like that. And the Steelers offense does have a lot of playmakers on it. Whether or not Big Ben is going to be ready to distribute the ball is another question, but like I said, one of these teams is a legit Super Bowl contender while the other is just happy to have made it to the party. If the Steelers make this one entertaining, I think that'll be a win for all football fans, but ultimately Chiefs should win this one pretty easily. Alright, shifting over to the NFC, the first matchup on Sunday afternoon in the 1 o'clock slot is going to be the Eagles versus the Buccaneers. And the Eagles, they come into the playoffs as one of the worst teams in the playoffs that I've ever seen. They literally didn't beat a single team with a winning record the entire season. However, Jalen Hurts has captured the hearts of everybody by being a pretty good fantasy football quarterback and just an overall good dude. I'm just glad he was able to survive the hit that FedEx Field out on him. And now the Eagles, they find themselves matched up with the defending champs. And you know Tom Brady holds a grudge like a teenage girl and will undoubtedly be coming for the Eagles. Even if this is a shell of the former Super Bowl squad that stole one from him, I think you're going to get a really locked in Buccaneers team. They know what needs to be done. Antonio Brown may have left this team with a hole at wide receiver, but he may have also lit a fire under this veteran squad right before they go into the playoffs, uniting them all together against public enemy number 1. And Tom Brady has won Super Bowls with much lesser weapons than he still has with Mike Williams and Rob Gronkowski, Cameron Brate. I think this one comes down to the Buccaneers linebackers making sure that they contain Jalen Hurts and this rushing attack for the Eagles. As easy as it is to root for Jalen Hurts, he's not far enough along in his quarterback progression, in my opinion, and the Bucs should win this one pretty handedly. And then at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday, we've got the 49ers versus the Cowboys, a classic matchup between 2 historical franchises. In fact, the whole playoff seems to be littered with some sort of NFL OGs here, which is really cool. This game will also be broadcast on Nickelodeon, which I don't know if you guys remember the Bears and Saints matchup that got broadcast on Nickelodeon. It was kind of fun. It's one of those, if you've got a second screen, it's worth having up for the special effects and stuff that they'll put on there, but ultimately you're gonna want an adult probably commentating the game. And really, this game doesn't even need the slime time cam or whatever, because these 2 uniforms match up so well. This is always a really pretty matchup on the screen. Speaking of pretty, Jimmy Garoppolo brought the 49ers back from 17-0 down against the Rams on the road. That was one of his best games as a 49er, yet there are still those warts showing up in those games for him with just terrible interceptions. He gets easily rattled, I think, even though Kyle Shanahan tries to do what he can to help him just get the ball into the playmakers' hands and let them do the work. I will be honest, as a Cowboys fan, this is not the matchup that I was looking forward to in the wild card. I really wanted some redemption on the Cardinals for that game a couple weeks ago. To me, what makes the 49ers a scarier matchup than the Cardinals is the coaching, the experience, the defense. All of that stuff spells success in playoff football. However, it's the lack of a running game that does make this 49ers offense feel a little easier to defend, especially for a defense like the Cowboys have. It's going to be imperative for the 49ers to get off to an early start and not fall behind, because if they become one-dimensional against this defense, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be in for a long day. Keeping up with Twitter during that 49ers Ram game was really interesting because so many people were second guessing everything that Shanahan was doing with Jimmy Garoppolo and with Trey Lance, and ultimately I feel like that 2 quarterback controversy is going to be a detriment to Jimmy Garoppolo's potential. However, maybe Jimmy G silenced all the haters last week with that performance. As for the Cowboys, they have been a roller coaster ride all season. After getting off to such a hot start, Dak Dak Prescott hurt his calf in an overtime win in Foxborough, and then he was rushed back 2 weeks later, leading to him falling into a slump that coincided with Zeke's knee injury. All in all, making the Cowboys offense a little bit untrustworthy and stagnant. However, Dan Quinn was able to capitalize on the offensive deficiency by elevating this Cowboys defense to a scary good level. With this trio of pass rushers, the Cowboys have a real opportunity to win it all, because making opposing quarterbacks uncomfortable might be the biggest key to winning playoff games. Even as a Cowboys fan, I could easily see the Cowboys being one and done as much as I could see them winning it all. In fact, I think anything short of a Super Bowl win, and one day we're going to look back at this trio of pass rushers and wonder how they didn't win it all. Once Randy Gregory signs with a new team in free agency, goes on to be a double-digit sack guy with that team, Micah Parsons turns into the next Lawrence Taylor, and DeMarcus Lawrence goes on to maintain that steady production while being the sort of lifeblood of this defense too. I weirdly expect this game to somewhat resemble that 49ers and Rams matchup last week. I could see the Cowboys jumping out to a fast lead, the 49ers chipping away and coming back. But in the end, I think that this Cowboys offense is going to be too explosive, too talented, and that we're going to see a game plan that would resemble something that you would expect from Kyle Shanahan. I think that Kellen Moore is really going to shine in this one. And then on Monday night, that's right, Monday night playoff football, we have got Cardinals versus Rams. And while this is so cool for the fans, man, this is going to suck for the winner of this game. But anyways, fun fact, it's been 8 long years since the Cardinals have been to the playoffs, and I think it was pretty obvious early on that they were going to reach the playoffs this season. Their moves in the offseason definitely communicated that they expected to be in the playoffs this year also. However, every year it seems like the last team to lose a regular season game ends up being one of the first to lose a playoff game. The 2020 Steelers going 11-0 being the most recent example of that. Now the Cardinals will try and buck that trend this year in round 3 versus the Rams. I've been a Cardinals defender, especially early on, when it seemed like they weren't getting the respect that they deserved, but I'm afraid without DeAndre Hopkins, this team just doesn't strike so much fear in opponents. I was kind of under the impression that DeAndre Hopkins was getting rested for the playoffs, but to see him still on crutches in week 18 really makes me hesitant to trust the team moving forward in the playoffs, because as much as the Cardinals are all in on this season, nobody in the league is as all in on this season as the Los Angeles Rams are. While Matthew Stafford legitimized the Rams in the eyes of many coming into the season, your boy was not sold on this being the missing piece to get the Rams over the top. But then they go and trade for Von Miller. But I still wasn't sure if he was going to be able to learn the defense quickly enough to make a true impact. But then Odell Beckham Jr. just falls into their lap, and I'm like, come on already, just give him the damn trophy. But really, Von Miller and OBJ were just icing on the cake. It's always going to come down to Matthew Stafford being able to elevate his game in the playoffs, something that he's never done. The reason for my hesitancy with him going into the season was his abysmal record against winning football teams. I think we saw that a couple times this year, that he would clam up or not look as explosive or just make terrible throws sometimes against good competition. But this is the year. I think this is the year it all comes together for him, and he finally wins a playoff game. Honestly, it's almost a guarantee that all of the home teams will not win the wild card round. It never happens. It never happened when there were only 4 wild card games. Now we've got 6. But honestly, I don't see either of the 7 seeds from Pennsylvania having a shot. I think that the Raiders are going to be too emotionally spent. The Cardinals are not the same team that we saw early on the season without DeAndre Hopkins. Honestly, I think that the 6 seeds are the only teams that have an opportunity to pull an upset in the wild card round. So moving on to the divisional round, we've got the Bills versus the Chiefs, the Bengals versus the Titans, the Cowboys versus the Buccaneers, and the Rams against the Packers. But let's start with the Bills versus the Chiefs. Honestly, I do love the Bills' chances in upsetting the Chiefs on the road. I think that they were built for this. I think that they knew coming into this season that this was one of the teams that they were going to have to overcome if they were going to reach their goal of reaching it to the Super Bowl. I just don't know if I even trust them enough to get to this matchup to go with them and pick them here to beat the Chiefs. So I'm going to stick with the Chiefs here because they've got the veteran experience. I'd argue that they came into this season kind of coasting a little bit, knowing that this was where they needed to get to and where they would eventually be at some point. If they don't come out and smack the Steelers but still win, I think that they are just going to be ready to smack the very next team that they see once they get their playoff wheels rolling a little bit. Sticking in the AFC, we've got Bengals versus Titans, and I do love what they're doing in Cincinnati. I think this Bengals roster is a lot of fun with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, one of the more underrated trios in the league actually, Joe Mixon. However, the Titans are going to be getting Derrick Henry back. Julio Jones finally caught a touchdown pass. I don't want to slobber all over the Titans too much. Go back and watch my last video where I actually had the Titans in the number 1 seed and I had them running the table all the way to the Super Bowl, and that because they just seem to be getting everybody back together just when they need to. The thing that held them back in the past was their pass rush. Harold Landry finally caught on. And speaking of having your mind geared towards getting to the playoffs to make your run, I think the Titans had that mindset this entire season where they would perform really well against the good teams on their schedule, and then they lost to some really crappy teams like the Jets. But this team busted their ass to get King Henry an extra week of recovery to prep for himself for this playoff run. He's going to have fresh legs. Even if he gets off to a slow start in this game, I think that he could come back, shake off the rust in this matchup against the Bengals, and really make his presence felt in the NFL for the rest of the season. Fun fact for the Titans, this is their third time in franchise history that they have had the #1 seed, and I think that on paper, this roster is as good as they've ever had. Moving to the NFC, we've got the Cowboys versus the Buccaneers. This was actually the NFL kickoff matchup in which the Cowboys sort of announced to the world that this was not the same Cowboys team that we've seen in the past couple years, and this team was coming to compete with the big boys this year. I feel like I made a living on the internet early on by hating on Tom Brady and the Patriots, and strangely lately I have come around to appreciating Tom Brady for the greatness that he is, for the effort and the hard work that he puts into being 44 years old and at the top of his game. It's insane. But with this juicy ratings matchup between the Cowboys and Bucks, this game will undoubtedly be the Saturday or Sunday primetime matchup. And not only will the Cowboys have the pass rush to disrupt Tom Brady, which has always been the key to beating him, the timing of the matchup may also be in their favor because, let's face it, 44-year-olds, I don't care who you are, they get tired much earlier in the day. Tom Brady himself has said this. He goes to bed at like 8:30 every night. Tom Brady goes to bed at the same time as 6 and 7-year-olds do. He tends to struggle with these later night matchups. And in this previous matchup, Tom Brady got Micah Parsons in his very first NFL game. They didn't even know what Micah Parsons could be yet at that point. They were able to isolate him in coverage, and he looked like a rookie in that game. You give this man a second chance to Tom Brady, I'm thinking that this defense really disrupts the Buccaneers offense and rattles Tom Brady and pulls the upset in Tampa Bay. Cowboys win. And that leaves us with the Rams versus the Packers. Guys, I don't know if you've noticed, but the team that shares the best record in the NFL just got back two elite players at their respective positions just in time for their playoff run. And these guys are arguably the best player at their respective positions. David Bakhtiari and Jair Alexander are going to boost an already loaded squad. But will they be able to shake some of that rust in time to make an instant impact in this one? Sometimes you can get guys back like this and they actually are a detriment before they are a boost. David Bakhtiari hasn't played all season. Been a long time since Jair Alexander's seen the field. And then teams with a bye week have traditionally been slow out of the gate as they get their feet back under them. So the floor will be set for the Rams to pull the upset here if they can get rolling quickly. I think that the weather is going to have a huge impact because these boys from LA will not be ready for the frozen tundra. And even if they make it a little bit close, I just don't think that Matthew Stafford is going to be able to overcome his former big brother Aaron Rodgers on the road like this. I do think the Packers are going to win this game. That leaves us with the NFL Final Four. Yeah, let's make the fancier graphics here. Chiefs versus Titans, Cowboys versus Packers. I know not a lot of upsets here, not a lot of underdogs, but I think that sometimes is the problem with parity is there might be a lot of really good squads, but there's only a few elite squads. And I think that these four teams are the only ones that have equal parts roster and coaching that sets them apart from the rest of the crowd. In the AFC, the Chiefs will be on the road for a change, visiting Tennessee, and I think that they're really going to miss that home field advantage that Arrowhead provides them. Nashville is going to be nuts for this game. There is potential for this game to be very cold. This will likely be Derrick Henry's second game back from his foot injury, allowing him to shake the rust and, like I said, exert his will on the NFL during these playoffs. Because I was so high on the Titans a month ago when I did my first projections, and they actually ended up where I predicted them to be, even though nobody else seemed to really agree with me on that one. I gotta roll with the Titans still. I just think that the stars are aligning for them, and I think that they are able to do their thing against the Chiefs in the playoffs because they are another AFC roster that has literally been built to stop the Chiefs. And then in the NFC, we have got the Cowboys versus the Packers. Aaron Rodgers versus his former head coach, Mike McCarthy. These two won a Super Bowl together, and surprise, surprise, Aaron Rodgers managed to turn a long-term relationship toxic. Other than winning a Super Bowl, the thing I remember most from the McCarthy and Rodgers relationship was that clip of Aaron Rodgers looking to the sideline and saying, "That's a stupid effing call." Even though these two alpha dogs were able to win a Super Bowl together, much like many other relationships between two alpha males, eventually this town ain't big enough for the two of us and the divorce happens. Mike McCarthy was fortunate enough to land a gig of such high pedigree as the Cowboys, and now he's got his opportunity to go back to his old stomping ground and pull the upset. And when you combine the Packers' lack of success in the playoffs lately with the fact that people have been touting this Cowboys roster as a Super Bowl contender for the last 3 to 4 years, and this is finally the roster that has kind of pulled it all together and looks like they could switch it on and really make some noise here. It may seem biased, but when your favorite team has a chance to actually win the Super Bowl and you've picked them in the past just for them to let you down, and yet this is definitely the best team of all of those teams that you've picked in the last decade, this is the best one, how could I not pick the Cowboys to win? Dak and Zeke went to Lambeau in their rookie seasons and pulled this game off, and I think they're going to do it again. Whew. I know the comment section just got hella spicy because of that pick, but come on, I had to deviate from the two #1 seeds a little bit, right? And guess what? Super Bowl 56, Cowboys versus Titans. It's been the Derrick Henry show all the way up until this point, right? And he'll probably want to take it to the Cowboys because they selected Ezekiel Elliott in that draft, #4 overall, when they could have had Jalen Ramsey at #4 and then Derrick Henry in the second round instead of Jalen Smith. So maybe this one's personal for Derrick Henry. But like I said, this is by far the best Cowboys roster that I've seen in a long time. And I'm not going to bring them all the way to the Super Bowl just to pick against them. If and when my team wins the Super Bowl, I want to be able to say that I had the balls to pick them going into the playoffs. So there you have it. The Dallas Cowboys are your Super Bowl 56 champions. You can spew your hate all you want in the comments. I can take it. And maybe I'll be back next week to redo all of these when the Cowboys lose to the 49ers. So as for the 3 different scenarios where #1 was the playoff bracket, that's obviously going to be Titans versus Cowboys. For #2, which I think are the 2 best teams, I will go with the Chiefs versus the Rams. On paper, these are easily the 2 deepest rosters in the league from top to bottom, including coaching in there. And then #3, the conspiracy pick. This is what the NFL wants just for ratings, and this one's actually a little bit tougher for me this year. I want to go with the Chiefs and the Packers again because the State Farm Bowl is always a safe bet, but the AFC just doesn't have the star power that the NFC does. So I'm going to stick with the Chiefs, but then I'm going to go with the Los Angeles Rams because the NFL would love for an LA team to make the Super Bowl, especially with the Super Bowl taking place in LA. However, it also wouldn't surprise me if it was the Cowboys because of the fact that the NFL said, hey, Jerry, in case California goes on some sort of lockdown or they change their guidelines and regulations and stuff, Jerry, do you think that we could use your stadium for Super Bowl 56? Jerry Jones obviously said yes. So there would then be potential for the Cowboys to host a home playoff game. Now, last year I did a whole video on why this was never going to happen, why there was a Super Bowl home field curse, and I went down and I broke down every single scenario where a team actually had a halfway decent roster the year that they were hosting a Super Bowl. Of course, the Buccaneers literally beat it that year, but the fact of the matter remains the same. It took 55 years for the stars to align to host a home Super Bowl game. What are the odds of it actually happening 2 years in a row? So there you have it. Those are my 3 different Super Bowl scenarios. Let me know what you guys' are, 1, 2, 3 in the comments. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so that you get notified if I have to make a revised version of these next week. I appreciate you guys watching here to the end, and thank you so much for liking, subscribing, commenting, all that good stuff. Good luck to your football team if you are in the playoffs. If you're not, sorry about your luck, but the NFL offseason can be hella fun too. I hope you guys will stay tuned. I've actually got a few videos set for the offseason on deck already. In fact, let me know in the comments which one I should do first. I've got a free agent mock draft, exactly what it sounds like. I've got my 2021 awards, or just a new year mock draft since we have the order of the top 20 now set in stone. So type in the comments free agent mock draft, or awards, or all 3 in whatever order you'd like, and I will do my best to get those out as soon as possible. Thanks again, and I will see you all in the next video.